encapsulate what your understanding of the yoga path and enlightenment is? That's a small question to start with.
I like the word encapsulate, so I can be brief.
Or not.
Or not. Basically, it means having a clarity in the mind, so you're not confused about who you are.
That's what you are referring to as enlightenment.
Yes.
Okay. And then would you mind saying a little bit about yoga with the capital Y as you practice it? Like what do you see as the yoga path, as the way you're taking it? I know there are many paths of yoga.
Yoga prepares the body and the mind for the same journey to overcome all the confusion of the mind with regard to who am I. But it also includes other bonus, like it'll help your physical health, it'll help your emotional health. So it'll cover very many different aspects of life. If you are inclined towards devotion, it'll cover that path also.
But that's not the path you have taken.
That's not the path I have exclusively taken.
So I would love it if you would tell us a little bit more about the path you've taken under the yoga umbrella.
I have dwelled onto each one of those, okay, even including some devotion path. I like that. Like when these Sai Baba people are chanting, I enjoy that chanting. From early days when my father was chanting, it got imprinted into my brain kind of permanently. And he had a very good voice, so I enjoyed that. That's something that sort of sticks in my mind forever.
Mm-hmm. But you are mostly known for your excellence in teaching yoga asana and pranayama. And so would you say that's the path that you have taken the most?
That's not how I know me.
Okay. Say more.
Other people know me through that, yes.
But you wouldn't say that's the path that you have taken?
No, that is included in the path that I have taken.
Okay.
I'm much more interested in the kind of removal of confusion that happened through contact with Krishnamurti and his teachings, through Swami Dayananda, and through my father.
Were you interested in the teachers that you mentioned before you started practicing the physical practice of yoga?
Long before, because my first teacher was my father. And he was very much interested in pursuing the path through Bhagavad Gita. So he would have conversation. Either somebody comes to our home to visit and they are talking to each other that I listen to, or I directly have a conversation with my father.
And your father also taught you postures, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you have shared with me a list of the levels of yoga as you see them, and I'm just going to read level 1 and then I have some questions for you. So you call level 1 practitioner, this is the physical or geometrical approach. It is considered foundational work for the beginner. It largely consists of outer alignment of the physical body in postures. This alignment depends on generally accepted anatomical concepts of how an ideal body should look. So what level do you think most students in the yoga world are at? Do you believe they're at this very beginner level, or if they're taking the path of physical postures?
Most people don't seem to pay attention to that alignment.
Right.
Which is what they should do.
So is there a level 0?
It's a non-level.
It's a non-level, okay.
Right, because they just, what they are taught by their teachers is gently do what you can.
Right.
Which is good in the sense that it doesn't injure them perhaps, but in the long run it may not be beneficial.
Do you feel like it can be beneficial though? Can someone at not level yet benefit and come into the first level?
No, it could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody is gently doing a forward bend, they're going to round their back.
Right.
Which will create a back problem, which otherwise they may not have.
Right, okay. So this geometrical approach, this physical approach is necessary to go deeper.
It's, I wouldn't say it's necessary in the sense that someone like Mahatma Gandhi never did asana.
Right.
But he could progress into other levels.
Right. Well,
Even Swami Dayananda, who I treated quite often, posture was definitely bad, and he complained about that he should not have ever given up yoga that he started. So it's not necessary, but it would be helpful.
so that was one of my questions, because you've given me these levels, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But I wondered, like, can somebody, you're naming some people that haven't gone through the first level, but they're at level 3 or 4, and so is that so it's not something that's necessary, but it can be helpful.
It can be helpful because when I see these other people, like let's take Swami Dayananda, because his physical body began to fail, he could not teach as much.
Right.
And he could not even practice certain things that he liked. So, by paying attention to physical body, that is what one is aiming towards. That I'll keep this body going so that I can do the other work better.
Right. So initially it's about just staying healthy.
Staying healthy.
And I think you said this in class the other day about at least you are staying healthy so no one has to take care of you, that you're not being a bother to anyone else. And if you're healthy, it's more conducive to you maybe doing better work in the world.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the next level you say is level 2. This is the physiological approach. In this approach, the muscle is educated to work in much more efficient manner by transferring the weight-bearing capacity to the bones. The breath and the mind begin to function with greater ease. It is essential prerequisite to deeper penetration. Most postures are held for between 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, so you've got the beginner who doesn't even know the shapes. They learn from a teacher, they understand the shapes, and then they move to this level.
Yes.
Would you mind saying just a little bit more about how that happens? Does it have to be with a good teacher? Does it have to be, like, is it something that you could learn out of a book?
Understand something about these levels is, it's not that you complete one level and then graduate to the next one.
Right.
All of them begin together almost, depending on your desire, your need. And then when you begin a physical level of alignment, muscles are obviously involved there. Your breathing also. So everything is involved. It's just a matter of you pay much more attention to what I call level 1 to start with. Mm-hmm. Then gradually that becomes automatic. So you don't have to pay attention to that. You begin to pay attention to deeper things.
But clearly there is an approach where if you're not doing the posture correct, or you're not doing it aligned, that you are dispersing your energy rather than cultivating your energy. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, it's a fair thing to say. And the question of where the mind is also comes up. Like somebody doing asana, but the mind is somewhere else. Then the teacher should pick it up and say, this is contrary to the effect that you want.
Right. I mean, like they're listening to the news while they're doing yoga.
Even talking to other people, yoga students in a class talking to each other is not a desirable thing.
Do you need to have a teacher for that? That's a good question, I think.
With every level you need a teacher.
Okay.
Somebody who is a genius might not need a teacher, but I would not generally assume that.
Well, that's a huge statement that makes me think, well, what about some people that don't have access to a teacher?
They teach themselves and pray.
Okay, I guess that's a good plan.
I met somebody who was playing tabla, the Indian drum, and he was playing extremely well from my perspective. Okay, very well. I have tried to play the instrument, it's not that easy. But he was playing very well. So he knew my brother. This was at a Sai Baba center. So I asked my brother, how did this fellow, from whom did he learn like this? He says, you should ask him. The way he learned was, he would get an idol of Saraswati, pray, and then play.
So he tapped into...
So his faith taught him. Mm-hmm. So I did not tell him or my brother this, but I'm telling you in this conversation. His tabla playing was excellent from my perspective. Okay? But his posture was not good. He would do much better if he sat correctly.
Right. So back to, you can still accomplish things if you're not aligned, but it's more energy output.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah. Okay.
And Stephen Hopkins would be a very good example of that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So if you're on this particular yogic path, you're starting with geometrical shapes, then you move into a deeper awareness of what your body is physically doing, whether you're...
Muscles more, mostly.
Okay. And so what do you get? You say you get into a more efficient manner by transferring weight-bearing capacity to the bone. So then you can stay in the pose longer. Is that the advantage?
Yes.
And then if you can stay in the pose longer, what does that give you? Better health and better focus?
Better focus,
better karma,
better concentration, better karma for sure. Even to think about doing yoga is good karma.
Okay, so you're saying that it's better always to do the physical yoga of practice on your bones. Is that true?
Again, I would emphasize it's helpful if you do it. It's not necessary. I don't think Jesus did any postures at all.
Right. But I'm saying, is it necessary from a standpoint to deepen your level of practicing?
Yes.
Or do you need...
To be able to deepen the practice.
So do you need to be on your bones and well aligned to then feel the nadis or the energy body?
Your feeling would not only be more penetrating, but definitely better.
But then that brings us to level 3, as you call it, the organic approach. And you wrote, the health, as distinct from strength of the body, is determined by health of the pelvic organs, the abdominal organs, the heart, and the lungs. Physical and mental efforts take on a different mode of observation, and corrections through receptive actions rather than directive actions of the previous levels. Postures are generally held for 3 minutes or longer. Physical alignment of the levels 1 and 2 may be modified to seek a better organic effect. So when you say the difference between receptive and directive actions, do you mean directive actions meaning someone else is telling you to do something?
No, I am telling myself to do something.
Because you know that you're supposed to do this in this pose. In other words, you're listening to the body rather than telling the body. Is that what you mean?
Both. There is a conversation, like you and I are having conversation. We are both listening and we are both talking. Okay? When you do it with your body, it's the same thing. The body is talking to you, you listen to that, and you are talking to tell the body do things in a different way.
Would you say that is the difference of the organic approach level 3, that you are now in more hearing mode of what's coming back?
Hearing, but not just with your ears. Sensing.
That's what I mean.
You're sensing more.
Right. But what is it that you're sensing? What are you looking for that is telling you, no, you should be a little bit more on the inner foot, or for example?
Like, let's say I'm doing Parshva Setu Bandha, okay, where I twist the body to the side. Okay? And from my experience with Mr. Iyengar, I have learned that no matter how well we twist somebody in a therapeutic class, he would always come and twist them a little more. So slowly I learned that what is he looking for? He's looking for what he will call the movement of prana. Okay? And he feels that this person can take a little more by twisting a little further over to the side. So you're looking for what I would call pranic movement. If that doesn't make sense, I would say you're looking for stretch.
But not stretch in the muscular sense. You're saying now it's more organ?
More of the effect on the organ.
I see. So when Mr. Iyengar was looking for more of a pranic movement, or you're referring to it as that, what is he looking for? Is he looking for the breath?
He looks
to
at
deepen?
variety of things. He looks at the way somebody's eyes respond.
Eyes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the color of the skin. Okay. That way he could tell. He would tell amazing things. Like on one occasion, he, for example, said, I think this person has cancer. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, it was diagnosed that this person has cancer.
And he shared with you that it was from the skin that they were able
From the skin.
Wow. Do you have the ability to know that?
To a lesser degree, yeah, not as good as he had.
And is that something that just came unbidden to you, that knowledge, or did he?
I don't think that can come by volition. It comes as intuition.
It's not something that he said, do you see this in their skin? He never said that to you.
He did, but we could not see what he was asking us to see.
Right. It's also, though, helpful, even if you don't see it in the moment, being told that that's what he sees.
Yes.
And then you know when it arrives, you're like, oh, now I see.
Right. Even after so many years, occasionally I'm doing an asana and I feel something and the memory goes back to 20, 30, 40 years ago. That, oh my God, this is what he meant. Whereas 30, 40 years, what happened was, he said something, we nodded saying, yes, we understand.
Right.
And he knew that you understand it very superficially.
I feel that way being your student for 20-something years. Often I'll be in my practice and be like, oh, this is what Ramanand meant, something that you told me a very long time ago.
Yeah, because words cannot explain something like this. So when you feel it, you feel it.
Do you feel like, for lack of a better word, that's the magic of yoga? That you're preparing your physical body for...
No, that I would not call it magic of yoga, although one could. I would call it blessing. The source is divine.
Because you could take two practitioners side by side over 20 years and they practice just the same amount with the same teacher, and then one person gets the understanding you're talking about and the other one is still stuck doing geometrical shapes.
And it's not like they are not being rewarded for what they do, but their attitude is different. So that attitude is being responded to.
Okay. So I also had the question on the organic approach. Is the organic effect always better or preferable to the musculoskeletal effect that was earlier?
Yes, because if you look at yoga as something that gives me physical health, then the reason you have physical health is because your organs function well. And of all the organs, the digestive system is considered the most important. Not that the other organs are not important, but this is primary. If digestive system goes wrong, and particularly the eliminative system goes wrong, you are inviting all kinds of disease.
All kinds of diseases.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is given primary attention.
So on that note, using the postures for the organic effect, given what you just said about the health of them, would you say generally, and I don't know the answer, like I'm asking you, generally is it you're trying to work in a way that the organs receive the effect? Because I know you sometimes use that language. Or are you actually trying to move them so they have more motility?
No, generally you are not trying to move the organs.
Okay.
You are working your legs mostly such that the effect of that work is registered on the organ. As a result of that, if the organ moves a little bit, that's just kind of incidental. You're not trying to move the organ.
So if I use that example, so if you're working the legs more correctly and more strongly, is it to support the organs? Would you use that language? Or is it more an actual energetic effect on the organ?
Energetic effect on the organ. If the same posture I was talking about, Parshva Setubandha, okay, if I move far enough, I feel a stretch on my descending colon if I'm going to the right. Okay. That effect of that stretch is felt. And it's not always a pleasant sensation. it can be like, oh my God.
So how do you know when you're doing something that's good for you or not good for you?
You don't.
Well, that doesn't seem fair.
No, you notice it over a period. If every day I do the asana, I'm told this is good for you. Somebody like Mr. Iyengar tells me. And instead of finding an improvement, I find something going wrong. Then either I go to the teacher and say, no, I know you mean well, but this is doing something bad to me. At which point he would insist, perhaps, Mr. Iyengar might, that I know, but continue. Or you might modify something, give me a little support to work with.
But I would also say there's so few teachers that one would have access to that has that type of knowledge. How would a student even know to trust their teacher or not?
You cannot know.
So,
But what is the first step required in taking a practice of yoga? Pray. That's why we begin every class with an invocation. So you trust God. Your intention is right. The teacher's intention is right. And with a prayer, you begin the practice.
What if you're an atheist? Are you out?
Atheist is a mistake. Okay?
It's a mistake to be an atheist?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to say more about that? Just in case we have any atheists listening?
See, the Judeo-Christian idea of God is not something we agree with.
You're saying we yoga philosophy? Or Hindu? Or how are you speaking it right now?
Yeah, Vedantic philosophy.
Vedantic philosophy, okay.
In that, God is not a separate being from you sitting out there somewhere manipulating things. That is not acceptable to us. Okay? Our idea of God is that this universe functions somewhat intelligently. Amazing things function. When something functions intelligently, it is reasonable to assume that there is an intelligence behind it. It's not automatic. Automatic, all that happens is chaos.
Could we argue that the world's pretty chaotic?
The world of human beings is chaotic, yes. Okay? But there are reasons for it. One has to understand those reasons. Okay? The intention is not to make it chaotic. Each one is trying to make it work in the way he wants or she wants. Okay? In the process, there is selfishness involved. That will have its effect. That effect will teach people not to do that. Okay? We are not worried about that kind of thing. See, there is an overall plan, if you will. That plan is working. Even within our lifetime, if I see in my lifetime, I'm 80 years old today. I remember when I was 20, 25, it did not look like people will come together at all. Things have changed considerably. At least people are talking to each other. In those days, when I was 20 years old, if somebody said that, all these African countries, etc., will become independent, we would laugh at it like, it took India 100 years. One of my friends talking to an African, he was a guard at our school, so we would occasionally talk to him. So this guard says, we have now woken up. So this man who spoke very good Swahili, he said, you haven't woken up, you're just beginning to rub your eyes.
Okay, so in the plan of the universe, that's where we are, rubbing our eyes?
We are rubbing our eyes a little better than we did when I was 20 years old.
Okay, that's a helpful perspective. Okay.
And just imagine, my ambition would be, I will go to England, become an engineer, go to a university, get a degree, come back and work in Africa. Or perhaps go to India and work. Africa was better. That was the ambition. The belief that I would actually go and live in England, unbelievable. And if somebody at that time told me that not only you will go and live in America
and give up engineering,
this was...
You would have said...
I would have said, no,
crazy.
you are impossible.
Yeah.
So things have changed tremendously. What happens every time things change for the better, that we very quickly accept that yes, it has changed, but then we want more. That's a good thing that you want more. Okay? But in the process, if I believe that nothing has changed, that's incorrect.
Okay.
And how long ago did women not able to vote in America?
Too long.
Very recently.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at how it's changed.
This is true.
Are there not people in America who still think women should not be allowed to vote? Yeah.
But not as many.
But not as many. Nor will they succeed.
Right. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
That's our hope. Okay, well, going back to our levels here, the next level after the organic approach is the pranic approach. And I can see how these two could be very intertwined. You wrote, as the mind becomes more passively alert, the student is able to recognize various locations where the energy of prana does not flow freely. Attempting to increase the muscular effort often results in a negative effect. Even as the foundation of the prior levels is held, the mind now has to learn how to let go and stop interfering with the natural ease that is inherent in a healthy body. The nature of inner alignment changes as the mind learns to be alert, even as it lets go of inadvertently held tensions. The mind that has learned to stop interfering is able to distinguish between useful thought to organize the external world and the useless, often damaging activity of the internal world. Okay, wow, so many questions about that one. The phrase passively alert, does that have anything to do with Krishnamurti's choiceless awareness?
It's related, but passively alert, I would look upon it as just the mind sees, if sees is the word, through 5 sense organs.
So you're just taking information in through your senses?
Yes. Now, if you look at only the eyes as an example,
yeah.
The idea that you are doing looking as though you are doing something completely is contradictory to what is happening. You cannot do looking. Looking takes place. Whether you are attentive to that or not is the question. So if I'm looking at Leslie, there is no action of looking that I'm performing. There's nothing going out from my brain outwards.
Right.
I'm receptive. I'm looking. I'm able to receive that effect of looking. But looking happens only because light thrown on your body is reflected off your body, goes through my eyes, optical nerve, creates an image in the brain. What I'm seeing is that image. Although I would say I'm looking at Leslie. I'm not seeing Leslie. I cannot. Nobody can. What I see is that. Now that requires logically first understand that that is so. But then meditate on it. To see, it's not enough to say, yes, that is so. It has very deep implication.
But let's relate it to yoga asana.
Yeah.
So you're in Paschimottanasana and you are looking at your feet to make sure your feet are in the right alignment. So that would be seeing it.
That would help my physical alignment, physiological work.
Right.
By itself, it will not help organic.
Okay, so but you're saying that you're saying at the pranic level is reached by being receptive to all your senses. Isn't that what you just said?
Understand what receptive means. Go to the first 2 levels where you actually do something.
Right.
There is a physical action performed. Okay? When you come to organic level, there is very little doing. There is much more paying attention to what's happening.
But you wouldn't say that you weren't efforting in the pose, would you?
You
you
keep
have
the
to,
first 2 levels
okay.
where the effort is.
Okay.
Then see the effect of that on your organic area. So your posture continues.
Okay.
Asana work, physical work continues. You become receptive to what does it do as a result.
And the information that you're looking for is only coming through your senses. You're saying in the
Not only the senses, there is an inner sense also.
Right, that's what I wanted to ask about that. But are you saying to move to evolve to a level where you can feel this stuff, you are looking for the information to come in through your senses?
To start with, definitely yes.
Okay.
But later it is much more kind of inner sense of touch. Like if I ask an average person, do you feel your stomach? Okay. By average, I mean almost everybody.
Right.
Okay? They are going to say, no, when I'm hungry, I feel the hunger, but I don't feel the stomach. Well, I feel the stomach. I feel my heart, not just because it's beating. Okay?
You can tune into it.
I can tune into it.
Mm-hmm.
I can tune into, I don't all the time feel my liver, for example, but I can tune into the liver. Okay? I remember talking to somebody who says, I can feel my liver. I said, put your finger where your liver is. He puts it on the wrong side. Okay? So that kind of imagination is not helpful.
So how, well, not how, because I know it doesn't come that way, but what do you attribute that ability to feel your organs like that? Just from practice? And
yeah, practice. It can be compared to a child learning to walk. When you first try to walk and you fall down, if you become too logical about it, that, my muscle is not able to do that, that's not helpful at all. You just keep getting up and walking, and someday you are surprised that you can walk actually.
Okay, I guess I want to know more, like, are you in your practice doing it intention, like, I want to feel my stomach? Or you just, one day you're in your practice being quiet and you're like, wow, I feel my stomach, the organ. Like
no, in the practice I want to feel variety of organs.
I understand. I'm just using that as an example. But did
it's
you intentionally say, I want to feel my organs to yourself?
Sometimes. Mm-hmm. Not all the time. Sometimes.
And then you would just bring your mind to the physical location as best you know it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But very often, even in these days, the practice does not lose the physiological aspect. So I still pay a lot of attention to that. Where I have much better ability to do something. Then while holding the pose, assuming there is time, I begin to sense, okay, what does that do to my ascending colon, descending colon? This is primary.
So you're doing an action in the pose and looking at a particular organ and seeing what the effect is on that particular organ. And that helped you cultivate a better awareness of that organ.
Yes.
Okay. And did you just do that for fun, or were you doing it because you had an issue somewhere and you were like...
I don't know if fun is the right word, but because I was interested.
You had the curiosity.
I had the curiosity. Mm-hmm. Very, very, very few times I have done asana practice that I was not interested in. That's a primary thing. I'm interested, that's why I do it. If you're not interested, my advice to people is go outside, take a big stick, hit a small ball around, play some golf.
If you're not interested in your asana?
If you're not interested.
In other words, don't do it because you're supposed to, do it because you want to.
That kind of thing can be done by somebody who, let's say you bring somebody to me and say, oh, this fellow has a knee pain. He's not interested in working at it. In fact, he finds it painful. But he would do it because he wants his knee to get better.
Correct.
That is the interest. I may not like the process, but I'm interested in the result I will get.
Okay, so with that example, and then back to you, is it I want to be healthier, so I want to know what the effect is when I push my foot this way on my stomach?
I want to be healthier so I can help other people and so I can get to my own working on enlightenment. That background is never forgotten.
Okay.
And therefore, for me personally, the interest remains.
Yes, being your student for a long time, you are always seeking. You're always looking at new things, teaching new things. Yeah, you always seem pretty interested. Okay, so you wrote in that pranic...
She just called me pretty.
On the pranic level, you wrote about the damaging activity of the internal. What do you believe is the damaging activity of the internal world? Is that like judgment? Is that like
judgment about who I am?
yeah, or how you're just that? Is that it?
Yeah, I mean there are levels of it, right?
Right.
You know, if I'm very proud about something, then that
Right.
is damaging.
Right. Or if you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah,
or,
that's also damaging.
okay. All right. So level 5, you call the sensory approach. The senses are called the window of the mind. Each sense allows a perception to take place. The untrained mind is not still and is not able to see the perception as it is. It colors the perception with preconceived notions, ideologies, and agendas. A still mind is able to clearly see that it is a collection of thoughts, a collection of the past, and its exercise of will is necessarily partial. It is partial in the sense of not being whole, as well as in the sense of being driven by preconceived agendas. Okay, so back in level 3, you said, you know, experiencing the organs through our senses, but now we're at the sensory approach. So can you clarify that? The sensory approach is
By
different?
sensory approach, I'm there referring to much more your sense organs. Okay. To be sensitive to something is what is organic level work.
Okay.
Whereas here I'm actually referring to sense organs.
Can you give me an example of that?
All the senses have to be receptive, just like we talked of eyes. Okay. Whatever my sense organs are feeding me, I have to see that that is an impression it creates on my mind, on my brain, and that's what I'm seeing.
And with it comes all the preconceived things that come with that.
Yes.
So you, okay.
Even listening to someone, Mukesh, that I like to listen to.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't just stop there where it says, I hear it with my ears and it's nice. No, I want to see its effect on my brain.
I see. Okay, so in the pranic level, it's giving you information, but it's also bringing along preconceived notions.
Yes.
You're saying at this level, you're bringing in the senses, but you're seeing the effect it has on you, on your body, mind complex. Is that what you're
And
calling it?
seeing what is rather than what I want to see.
Okay. So, are you saying this is a more direct approach to still the mind? I mean, what do you feel? I mean, there's lots of different ways. It's a different path that we talked about at the beginning. This conversation is limited to just the yogic path, correct?
I'm not
I mean,
sure
can
what
you
you're
get
asking me.
into this phase? I want to know, like, someone
Yes.
who's lived.
Not only you can get into it, it is absolutely essential.
Okay, and do you need to do the other levels before? You're saying, like,
No.
not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
It depends on karma, person.
Karma, even your individual path. Vairagya for a soldier is something very different.
Right.
Vairagya for someone like Mahatma Gandhi was very different. Vairagya for Mother Teresa would be different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vairagya, you know, that loss of color that I talk about happens because your unintelligent passion decreases.
You're unintelligent.
Unintelligence means, you know, if I am a very overly sexual being, then Vairagya is related to that. And when I lose interest in sex, that is Vairagya. But interest in any kind of passion,
Right. It colors your perception.
it colors your perception.
Okay, I understand. So that sounds a little bit like meditation.
There is no hard and fast rule that this is asana and this is meditation.
Okay.
One culminates into the other.
I think some meditation teachers might argue with you on that. I don't disagree with you, but I mean, I have not known you to ever teach meditation. As a matter of fact, you often say you can't do meditation. You are just in a state of meditation.
Meditation is a state. It is not something you do. The word do is incorrect because it's like saying, okay, Leslie, can you do happiness? Whatever gives you happiness, you can do. Happiness is a state that happens to your mind.
Well, you can say, I'm going to go in the other room and meditate. You can't say, I'm going to go in the other room and be happiness.
No, you can't say you cannot be happiness, you already are.
Okay. All right.
But let's say some conflict happens here, we are arguing about something. You don't like it. And so you say, I'm going to go to the other room. The desire is that you will be happier in the other room, away from this conflict. Okay? So that's what happens with happiness. Okay? You can say, I go in the other room and I will meditate, yes. What is wrong to say is, I'll go in the other room and I will do meditation. That's the difference. I will meditate is fine.
Okay, I understand. So I don't know if this is a true story, but I believe I heard a story that Mr. Iyengar's teacher told him to stop doing asana and to meditate.
That's what he told me, yes.
And he said the asanas are his meditation. Do you remember? I don't remember the full story, but I don't think he was happy that he was told to stop doing the asanas and to meditate.
He was not happy, and because of respect for his teacher, he would not argue back. He would just say, yes, meaning I have heard you.
But to your knowledge, he didn't do that.
Well,
he didn't stop doing asana, we know that. But did he meditate?
To him, it was meditation.
Okay, and do you feel the
By
same?
meditate, if you mean he sat in a posture and just put his mind into that. And no, he did not. But I remember even in teaching a class, very, very, very strongly, it's an asana class, no, it is a pranayama class, at the end of which he went, just before saying, okay, come out of Shavasana, he said, now wasn't that meditation? And everyone in the room felt like, yes, of course it was. Because you are completely unaware of outside world, absolutely.
Okay, do you meditate?
I hope so, yeah.
And, okay, but not in the traditional thing of sitting with a, there's lots of different types.
I would object to what you call traditional. Traditional
is
habitual.
Yes, I mean, there's meditation techniques where you sit looking at a wall, or, your eyes are open, or you sit with your eyes closed and you focus on your breath. But don't we do that in yoga all the time?
Of course.
Yeah. So would you say that's your style of meditation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, have I done sit-down meditation like Swami Dayananda would teach? Yes, I have. I did not find particular interest in it. Because when Swami Dayananda ji was teaching, he was giving much more emphasis to so-called normal problems, like people's issue with their parents, things like that. I don't have issues with my parents. So to me it was like interesting.
Do you have issues?
Huh?
Do you have issues?
Do I have issues? I have one issue, his name is Viren.
Okay, and this is now on recording. Okay, well that brings us to the level 6, which is the last level you wrote about, called the meditative approach. The doing of the first level culminates into the non-reactive recognition of the 5th level, which again is you call the sensory approach. The use of the will that is essential to the first level becomes an interference to the last level. Okay, that totally makes sense, because you're imposing your will on the body, right? Okay, so every effort to seek inner freedom gets resolved into a meditation which knows that the actions resulting from that meditation are choiceless. Wow, can you please explain that? Every effort to seek
greater
inner
and
freedom.
greater understanding comes that nothing is happening to you.
Again, this is in a pose. You're in a pose, and you're approaching your postures in this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
More clear understanding as opposed to simply verbalizing something. More clear understanding comes that what is happening to the body.
Okay, so you're in a posture, it's happening to the body, but you're having a physiological response to it? You're having...
I'm not having, body is having.
Body's having, okay.
One day I come here from the hospital. Andrea is not here, she's gone out to get something. Viren is sitting here. And I said, you know what, I'm going to walk up and down the steps. He was terrified. It was all over his face. He says, Dad, are you sure you want to do that? I said, yeah. So he came and waited by the steps in case I fall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What he was going through, the experience he was going through, was, I would say, 1,000% different than what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
I was aware of the senses, and I was aware that I can walk up. When I cannot, I would stop. That much togetherness I had. He did not feel that I had, because he had seen me fall before.
Right.
But when I fell, I was not in a control of my senses.
This was more, you knew that you were okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that I could do this much.
So this approach, though, in a practice, you're going into your yoga space to do a practice. It's not something that you can make happen.
Definitely, yeah, you can't.
Right? So is it just something that comes?
Yeah, a good example of that would be, I like swimming. I go to the ocean or to the pool and start swimming. Okay? Am I bringing joy? No, I'm swimming. Joy comes. I can't make a claim. In fact, while I'm swimming, if I think of, this is fun, the fun decreases.
So it's full absorption.
Full absorption.
No separation.
No separate, no control over it at all.
I've heard the expression, you reach where you're not doing the pose is doing you.
Yes.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, that's very correct, if it's not misunderstood.
Right.
Yeah. The trouble with language is that the listener will interpret it in their own way, which may not be the way the speaker intended.
But just to say a little bit more about it, would it be accurate to say that the self, the small self, disappears? So it's like you become the pose because you're so absorbed in it. You and the pose become one, or you're so absorbed there's a loss of self?
I won't say small self disappears, but it gets put into its rightful place.
Which is what?
It loses its importance.
Okay. All right, well, the last sentence, which I love but still don't quite grasp, and I'd love if you could say more. Real unconditional freedom finds itself resting on the ground, which offers choicelessness. Oddly enough, that is the end of all struggle, the ultimate paradox. What? That is so much to take in. Can you help me understand that?
You begin your yoga practice, you go through so much effort.
Yeah.
And throughout all that, from every level, while what is happening changes, you still are very much the doer. Okay?
Yes.
I understand I said you don't do organic work and so on, but you are the receiver. Okay? All that drops away. Okay? You are awake. Okay, you're not asleep, but the sensation is very, I don't even call it sensation. It's very close to what you would experience in deep sleep.
Which
Which
if I'm in
nothing.
deep sleep, I don't know.
Yeah. In deep sleep, you experience nothing.
But in deep sleep, you're not aware of self, but if you're doing a posture and you're saying you're in this level, you are aware of yourself now.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. It's very close to that.
Very
it's
close
not
to
exactly
it.
the
Okay.
same. But, for example, if the thought comes that I am in deep state here, then that interferes.
Right.
Okay? Whereas if
That's
it's,
self-awareness.
yeah, if it simply happens, later I look back and say, my God, an hour went by, I was not aware. You become oblivious of time or who you are.
Right.
I'm not Ramanand Patel.
Right. Yes, I understand that. And I think that happens not just in yoga, I think it happens with artists, musicians.
Absolutely.
They get completely absorbed and lose track of time. Or time doesn't even...
Since you know Mukesh, a good example of that would be, he got into a very bad auto rickshaw accident in India. Okay? Fractured foot. And the doctor says, I cannot give you any anesthetic. This is going to be painful. So he says, give me a moment, let me sing, then you can do whatever. And the whole operation was done while he is in a singing mood.
He was singing while they were doing it?
Not singing loudly,
Right.
but in his mind.
Wow.
With Swami Dayananda, the same thing. You do some adjustment and he goes like... Later he says, the amount of pain that was in the body when you did that was so much that most people cannot tolerate it.
And he just...
But he is in a state. Literally, it is like saying, you know, if your mind cannot sense a pain, are you in pain? No.
Right. Okay. So you said more about like levels. I don't know what other word we could use. Is level the best word to use in regard to this? Because it denotes kind of a position or rank and scale.
These words like level, path,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
never convey the full meaning.
Right.
You have to see behind the word what is the intent.
Yeah, you use the word approaches, and I think
Approach.
is better than levels. Yeah. So I know Western practitioners seem to be more concerned with, am I progressing? And so if we present this as you've written it, are they going to get caught up in that? How can we avoid that?
If your practice makes you proud, you are not progressing. You are going backwards.
Right. So it should make you more humble? Is humble, does that apply?
Not humble in the sense a politician is. Yes. You know, in India also they got namaste, namaste. When they don't mean namaste. They mean I got you, I got you. But truly humble.
Yeah. I actually think I understand that. But maybe I don't because I just said that.
It will get deeper. The depth of understanding these kind of things never stops.
Yeah. I can see that as well. Also on the last stage of meditation, the choiceless state, and I talked about how that's similar to what we think of more traditional meditation definitions, I'll say. Do you think everybody is going for the same state? Do you think, like, if you're a Zazen meditation student, are you trying to do the same thing that the advanced yoga practitioner is?
See,
Are we all trying to get to the same place that we're already at?
everybody you look at who practices this kind of thing, their intention is, they can call it to be one with God, call it enlightenment, call it super samadhi, whatever you call it, the intention is the same. They take different paths. Okay? Like going on a mountain. When you reach the top, everybody's at the top, same place. The path may be different. Your struggle of going up may be different.
So back to, you had said there are a lot of paths. So an example of somebody who lives in the middle of Indiana and is a farmer, but is just a really good person, and kind and thoughtful and does good acts, but doesn't know what yoga and meditation
Doesn't
is.
matter at all.
So that person can still get to the top of the mountain.
Absolutely.
But what's their path? Like,
Why there is,
Through
they are
good-
already
through
on
good
the
acts.
path.
through good acts,
Yeah.
like Mother Teresa. If consciousness is experienced as a field of awareness, you're seeing objects, you're seeing maybe a person, you're seeing also what's going on inside of you. Are you seeing just everything? I mean, like, is there any
Seeing in the sense of aware.
of just witness? Like sometimes you say the witness. Are all things equal in
I'm
that?
not being aware or becoming aware. There is awareness.
Of everything.
Of everything, whatever comes in the field of that awareness, I am aware of.
And that includes objects, people, my outer self, my inner self?
Sounds, breeze, bird chirping.
You're just witnessing all of it. Is that, I would like you to just, I would like to end with, can you give as best you can with words, I know it's hard, but with consciousness, like, because we throw that word around a lot. Oh, I went to this yoga retreat and I came back and I'm in a different level of consciousness. I mean, right, you hear people say things like that. But consciousness as you know it, or as you could describe it as best you can.
On the one hand, I do understand what people mean when they say I was in a different state of consciousness. I also understand when people say my consciousness expanded. I understand that terminology.
Right.
That's a different use of the same word.
Okay.
Just like somebody is unconscious. From my perspective, the mind is not aware of something. That's all. You can't be unconscious. Nothing can be unconscious in the sense of being outside consciousness. That's not possible. It is bigger mistake than saying, I'm outside this space. Can you?
No.
Nobody can be out. Nothing can be outside space. Okay? Consciousness includes that space. So to say I was outside consciousness or I had more consciousness, less consciousness, it's not a term that makes sense to me. On the one hand, as I said, I understand what they mean by it. They had a different experience. That's all.
But if we're on the path as a yoga person, and you've decided, you or someone else has decided that yoga is my path in this life to self-realization or enlightenment, then how is consciousness involved in that? Is that what we're striving for? Or to realize or remember? Or
you are striving to eradicate every wrong notion that your mind has come up with, and there are plenty of them. But look at space again. People say, oh, my inner space. Yes, there is space in your body. But by inner space, if you mean that space is in the outer space.
Because it's everywhere.
Because it's everywhere. You are in space. The fact that space is also in you is just part of the same phenomenon.
I know words are getting in the way, but if we started the talk with, we want to help people on the path to enlightenment. So is enlightenment just realizing that your consciousness, or it's hard to bring in
Enlightenment,
words.
I am defining again, is giving up all the notions that your mind has made. The biggest and the most damaging notion, damaging in the sense with regard to enlightenment, but it's necessary. The biggest notion is you have a sense of individuality. This is a disaster. That disaster, according to our study of the subject, is created by what we call Maya, which is a whole huge different subject.
For another time. See how you walked right into that? We might have to talk again.
I can give you a book and say, read this book. After you understand the book, we can talk about it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this. And I hope that it has helped other people to understand the multiple levels of yoga. Is there anything else that you want to say about what we talked about today?
No, with regard to this, you can just say, offer it freely to anybody who wants to listen. We don't want to make money from this.
Okay.